It's a real pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's always a pleasure, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Yeah, really interesting times right now. We were just catching up before I hit record, and Live Nation's earning report just dropped. There's a bunch of stuff moving in the atmosphere. There was a breaking news around a survey that just launched. Some things going down in Portland. Like we're gonna have a wild conversation, cover a lot of ground here. But why don't we just jump in? State of Live survey results is still relatively new. I will say, for me, I had this mixture of optimism and fear, I guess. On the optimistic side, the impact is just unbelievably tremendous. $80 billion that this segment is producing, and the economic impact being even more than that. Hundreds of thousands of employees. Like the impact is so real. But then at the same time, the stat that was just glaring at me was 64% did not operate at a profit in 2024, which frankly begs the question, if they didn't operate at a profit, like what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a founder that's just losing money running the venue? That it's anyway. So one of the most talkative intros I've ever had, frankly, because I'm just like excited, bubbling up with excitement to have this combo. So like let's just jump right in. State of Live, yeah.
I mean, listen, let's first talk about the economic output, $153 billion. I also think it should be said that these numbers are extraordinarily conservative. Our economist had really high standards in terms of where we collected from, what was good data, what was bad data. And he has stressed to us over and over again, this is a starting point. This is a starting point. These numbers could be far lower than the impact actually is, but let's just look at those numbers. $153 billion in total economic output, 184 million fans served in 2024.
Wow.
And the number that kind of jumps out to us is the $86.2 billion to the US gross domestic product. That is more than the airline industry. That is more than the US beer industry. That is more than the video game industry. Um,
Wow.
we did not expect that.
Sorry, what
And
was that number again?
$86.2 billion dollars
Contribution to US GDP. I see that. Yep. Yep.
contribution to US GDP, which is larger than gaming, beer, and airlines.
Wow. Wow.
And I think that speaks to the importance of these rooms. And you talked about the profitability number. People don't believe it. I was listening to Bob Lefsett's podcast yesterday. He didn't believe it.
You didn't
I
believe
think
it.
the bigger question that
What
everybody
was his
says,
grounds for not believing it, by the way?
I
It
mean,
was
it was
just a
more just
hunch.
amazement,
Okay, I
amazement
see, I see,
that
I see, I
that
see.
that
Okay.
that 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 many stages were not turning a profit.
Okay, it's not that he was questioning the data, it's that he was
Maybe
just
he
shocked by
was,
it.
maybe
Okay.
he was,
Yeah,
maybe he should have me on and we can talk about it. But
yeah.
from our perspective, every day, just in the last 24 hours, I had a conversation with a venue owner. He has a small venue in the Midwest. He doesn't have enough money to pay his mortgage, just based on what he's bringing in for this small venue, which means he has to go work other jobs. He's got to go find other opportunities just to get by. There's another small venue that prior to this coming out told me about the losses that they were taking. They just dip into their savings to make sure that they can support themselves, or they don't take a salary in order to make sure that they can keep their venue open. I mean, these people, we talk a lot about the monopoly, and Live Nation exists for one purpose, which is to make sure that shareholders across the world are enriched. Nobody's getting rich working in independent venues. And ultimately, what the reason that are that the owners of these venues are willing to keep their doors open and go find other jobs and dip into their savings in order to make sure they continue to do what they love is because they are doing what they love. And I think that's a really important factor. This impact that's larger than the beer industry and larger than the airline industry is because they are living their dream.
I love that. That's I mean, love part of that, frankly. The passion of the industry has like always inspired me. I don't love the side that they have to dip into their savings to make that a reality. And I want to, keep unpacking this, more and more and more. And by the way, just to kind of correlate my own experience in the first quarter of the year, we had a swell in churn in the business, and by from people who closed their doors, just not people that were like leaving Prism because for whatever reason. Like by far the biggest reason we lost business in the first quarter was folks just went out of business, and it was the most that I had personally seen since the pandemic, frankly. Which is astonishing because the pandemic was a moment where it was literally impossible to operate, because the government forced everyone to shut down. And I saw just as much as more shuttered business in the first quarter. So, and this was around the time that you were working on the survey. So I was like, frankly, excited for this to come out, and just to get the data out there. So I'm not surprised to hear that. It's really unfortunate. I mean, how do you reconcile these two things? On one side, a bigger impact in the beer industry. On the other side, the reality of like the day-to-day operator just being so challenging.
I mean, I think it's indicative of the people that we bring to neighborhoods, right? That contribution to GDP is not just the spending that happens in our venues. It's the ripple effect that we talked about in 2020. It's that ripple effect that we used in order to convince Congress that we were worth the largest arts investment in US history. And so when you think about how many people come out because we're doing a show on a Tuesday night and Live Nation's amphitheater is closed on a Tuesday night, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't necessarily have new movie releases on Tuesday night. I
Yeah.
mean, we are the place that in most communities people can go to every night. The average venue is in business 4 days a week. They have shows 4 days a week, right? And so and many have more. And so if you look at kind of what we mean to communities, what we mean to neighborhoods, we're the first businesses in neighborhoods that are willing to go there so often. And so from where we sit, it's hard to rectify that lack of profitability and the economic impact that we have. But I don't even think that I have an answer.
Yeah.
I think it's the sacrifices that these people are willing to make. And to your point, a lot of times you don't know if they're closing. If Prism is anything like NIVA, if we have a member who can't pay their dues, one, we do everything we can to let them know that they can stay a part of
Totally.
shit.
Yeah.
But oftentimes they'll stop paying. We won't be able to reach them, and then we see 3 months later, 4 months later that they closed.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's an every week occurrence or even an every day or every month occurrence, but venues do close. We're seeing it. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing even members close eventually, and ultimately I think that is because they just can't hold on anymore, and they cannot make that justification of jeopardizing their family's future or mortgaging their home or dipping into their savings or getting that extra job in order to do what they can to keep their venue open. Sooner or later, the dream ends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's NIVA's job and it's Prism's job and it's everybody else's job in this industry, especially the advocates like us, to make sure that dream doesn't end.
Did you get a sense from the survey about the 44 or 46% of the customers that are profitable? Like, I'm wondering, it 64% not being profitable is a headline and is shocking. But then, quite literally the glass half full side of that perspective, not quite half full, but 46% full, is that, wow, there's a lot of venues in the country making it. And, what did you get from anything on the survey about how, what these venues are doing well? And then even like the top, 5 to 10% of those, like that's something that I wanted to spend some time asking you, is like, what can we say about the venues that are making it well, and how, and what needs to be replicated so that we get that 60% number down?
The first is scale. Um, if generally, if you are a promoter that has a venue and operates a festival, or a promoter that has multiple venues, you are doing better than if you have just one small venue that's under 500 capacity or under 350 capacity or even smaller. That's the first factor in terms of that 46% that are profitable. The second factor is,
Sorry if I don't worry if I ask you too detailed of a question, but do you know the percentage of that 64% that's like one venue operator?
I don't.
A good chunk of it
I'm
though, huh?
certain that we have a categorization. We just haven't released it publicly.
Okay. Yeah.
And that maybe, this data is going to live on for years, at least a
Yep.
couple of years.
Yep.
And so maybe that's an opportunity for us to dig deeper in order to keep this data and the story around it alive. But right now, that data isn't public. But I'm
But yeah,
just
let's keep
telling you the
going though. So
factors as
venues
we
with
saw.
scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
venues that have scaled in some way.
Cool.
The second factor is tax status. If you are a nonprofit, you have another revenue stream that you can tap into, which is primarily donations, but also grants. That doesn't mean that nonprofits are profitable. It just means that that revenue stream is a stronger piece if they have built it out over a series of years. And it takes years to build out individual giving. It takes years to build out kind of that philanthropic grant making arm of your venue or of your promotions organization. So that is the second factor. The third factor that we saw is really our competition. Are you in it's hard to know because everything was anonymized, but what I have seen just anecdotally outside this survey is that if you are in a small secondary market and there's not a lot of a competition around, you don't have Broadway, you don't have a theater, you don't have a theater scene in your community, and you are the only game in town, you're probably doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
As long as
Mm-hmm.
your costs are not out of control. I've said this over and over again, but the funnest calls that I take at NIVA are people that are interested in starting a new venue. And the political guy and association guy that they ask to run the organization isn't necessarily the best person to give advice on how to start a venue, but I love to chat with them just to see what they're up to and what they're thinking. And a lot of these calls are with people who have never done anything in live entertainment or music or comedy in their life. They live in communities that are either rural or suburban and don't have a lot around them, and they just want to give their communities something to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're going to be successful or not, but given that there is so much pent up demand and not an
Yeah.
outlet for it, from my perspective, if you can get a good rent and you think the economics can work for you, you should try it. If you really want to do this and you feel passionately about it and you talk to enough people and learn how to do this business, why not?
Yeah.
Especially if your community is longing for it and they don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Do you have any data on like how many new venues opened up in 2024?
We don't. We
That'd be a
don't.
cool one to understand.
Hey, maybe that's the next round, Matt. Give us like the next iteration of the State Alive and we'll have it for you.
Yeah, perhaps this podcast can be like a review of like what are all the things that,
Yeah.
whatever it
Two,
could be in.
2 years from now when we launch this again, you're just going to send me a recording of all the things that I think in this podcast. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's good feedback about like, lack of competition. They've scaled. Not nonprofits have this ability to fundraise, and that can cover gaps. Although it is a funny paradox around, yeah, maybe they're not profitable in that traditional sense, but there's definitely a difference between a nonprofit that's doing well versus a nonprofit that's in the red. I'm sure that's what you were referencing. But
Correct.
I think like a double clicking on that 44% could be a good follow-up survey in terms of like let's get the top 100 things that are going well for you. You're profitable. You're one of the lucky, you're one of the lucky ones in the industry that are like, what are you doing well to make it work? And I have my own assumptions on like what venues, do well, how they do well. But it's a interesting question. I mean, something that I hear a lot and is owning the land, owning the dirt, which I guess directly relates to expenses and staying power in the industry and not having your rent go through the roof. Did you have was there any like segments based off of like did they own the dirt or were they renting? Like that's a major that's a hypothesis that I have around that 64% that aren't operating profitably. I wonder what chunk of that like don't own the land underneath their venue.
I mean, again, we didn't put this out publicly. We just didn't feel like it added to the survey, but um, most of the respondents rented.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Even the ones that were profitable rented as well, huh? Hmm.
Or they didn't have full ownership. I don't want to put everybody into that one rental category, but just based on the limited survey data that we had around that. And I'll also just say, like, there are certain things that weren't required, and kind of the rental versus ownership piece was not required. So some people just didn't fill that out. I mean, it was a monstrous survey.
Yep.
It was going to take 40 minutes on a good day to
Yeah.
fill most of that out if you had all the information. But anecdotally, it seemed like most were renting, and I think that's what you'll see in the overwhelming majority of cases. But the problem is that if you were as you know, owning the dirt is important, because if you were renting, you're the first business in that community, you get a good rate, and then
Yep.
the community builds up around you, principally because of the work that you're doing in that venue. It puts ownership out of reach. But it's just a capital game. You know how this works.
I
The
it's
capital,
a fascinating, yeah.
the capital market does not exist for independent venues. It does not exist for independent promoters. And
Hmm.
I appreciate people like Boris Patronoff out there with Soundcheck Capital, like trying to create a capital market for independent venues. Like, we need more of that. We need like 20 Borises out there trying to
Hmm.
create capital resources for independent venues, until the banks take us seriously, and they should. um, we're going to have to find some other source of capital.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, whenever I do kind of, talk to a venue that's doing well and they own their dirt, I always feel a little bit bad like proposing that as a solution, because that's kind of like one of those things that, would have been nice 20 years ago, right? I guess the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and next best time is now, but like real estate prices have gone up. And
I hear the
it's
quickest way to get from DC to California is a private jet, but that's not that I'm going to be able to
exactly,
build.
yeah.
So,
Real estate has gone down in Austin, which is interesting. And I don't know if it's gone down enough in other markets, but commercial real estate spaces have gone down. I wonder if that's something that encourages some venue owners to lean in and get ownership of their dirt, or not.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but I will say, you're in Austin. You know, they have the most recent prime example of a cultural land trust coming in and
Yeah.
buying, right, with a broken spoke.
Hmm.
Creating a cultural land trust. These are all things that need to happen.
Yeah.
These are
That's an
things that are so
amazing
important, right?
situation.
I
Yeah.
mean, right? Like a venue that was about to go over or be developed, the city stepped in, they bought it, they found an independent operator. That's exactly what we need to see across the country. It's funny, we're seeing this in affordable housing. The problem is that, you got to make sure that people have a roof over their head. But you also need to make sure that small businesses survive. We just haven't gotten to that spot yet where it's normal for land trust to be applied to cultural settings or to independent venues or comedy clubs or festivals or anything in between. We got a long way to go.
Yeah. What do you, just to kind of hang on the survey for a little bit more, for those, like, what do you think, what's the hidden message in the survey, would you say? Like, what's the thing that's not obvious that now that I have the chance to talk to one of the brains behind it, and you made sure I remember that Kendall was like, yeah, shout out to Kendall for all the work that she did on it. But now that I have, you on here, what do you, what's something from the survey that you would hope people realize that you feel like is probably like maybe in the fine print?
I think the thing that kept jumping out to me is just the challenges.
Yeah.
If you go and you look at the full report, the number one challenge was not what I was expecting.
Hmm.
The number one challenge that was listed was marketing,
Hmm.
bringing in an audience. I mean, I think after I saw it, it made so much sense. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about monopolies and the lack of competition. We spend so much time talking about inflation. We spend so much time talking about resale, and all of these are major issues. They all register very high.
Hmm.
But in the end, what our venues want more than anything else is to break through,
Hmm.
to break through. And I think,
That is a fascinating point. Marketing was number one. Decrease in alcohol sales was number 10. And then, like monopolies, like competition was number five. Yeah, all of those made the list, to your point. Cost of rent and mortgage was number 8. And those, I mean, decrease in alcohol sales and cost of rent and mortgage, that probably would have been my assumption of what was 1 and 2. So you're bringing up a fascinating point that the number one thing was marketing slash bringing in an audience. And those are grouped together. So I'm left wondering a little bit if what's what's the difference between those two?
I
And
think it's you, in my opinion, you can probably just delete marketing and
yeah,
bring an audience.
bring in an audience, which goes into like the broader state of the economy, right? Unfortunately, the macro economy, I would say,
It's it's just so hard. I mean, when you look at, StubHub had a nice week and a half run trying to get their IPO off the ground. And they filed their S1, and then it went down in flames in less than
yeah,
2 weeks.
yeah,
But they put out an S1, and they
yeah.
had a lot of information there. And the key part of that S1 shows that they spent nearly $1 billion last year in ads.
$1 billion in ads. Oh my.
$1 billion. It's a little bit less. It's more like close to nine.
Yeah.
But let's just round up $1 billion. How are we going to compete with that?
Mm-hmm.
They are paying to place our shows above our box offices
Yeah.
in an attempt to siphon off business from our box offices.
Yeah.
Sell those tickets for more. A lot of times, many times, they're speculative. They don't even have the inventory. They place their results above our box offices. They sell those tickets for more. They turn around, they buy them. Those brokers buy them from our box offices, and they profit.
Mm-hmm.
And those fans don't have enough money to spend on a beer or a non-alcoholic drink or some food in our rooms. It's a vicious cycle. I mean, that is one example,
Mm-hmm.
one company that can outspend our entire sector in 1 year, multiple times over. Yes, I was surprised that bringing an audience was the number one challenge, but we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be. This absolutely is a problem. And I'll also just say that, as the leader of NIVA, it was eye-opening for me, because when I can now point to the economic impact that we have and the collective power that we have, this is absolutely a fixable problem in time. And we need to
Mm-hmm.
focus on it
I
collectively.
love that.
We're going to need Prism's help. Lord knows our venues are using you individually, but we need everybody's help. We need everybody who cares about independent venues, companies, fans, volunteers. We need them to help us break through.
I do want to spend a lot of time on solutions, and it's so tempting to talk about the problems because they're so abundant. But I think there's a lot of solutions being offered as well. Before we jump to that, I think just to talk about the StubHub thing for a second. I listened to this debate between Randy Nichols and a scalper. You didn't happen to catch that debate, did you?
No.
It was really, really interesting, and it was cool to see
Which
them.
one? Sorry, I should repeat and just say which debate between Randy Nichols and a
I can't
scalper.
remember what the fellow's name was,
I've
but
seen some back and forth in writing, but is this like a video
yeah,
or
there's an hour and a half debate. Maybe I'll link to it I'll certainly send it to you afterwards. It was
yeah.
really good, and it was good to hear the kind of the strongman that got set up and the perspectives on the scalper side of the business, and just to kind of I left feeling really good about Randy's side of the debate and thought he did a really incredible job. But for instance, like the whole with bringing in an audience being the number one item. Just to be fair, I mean, a counter argument a scalper might make is, hey, we're playing we're playing our part in moving inventory. And that's a curious thing to grapple with because I think that's true. It's also true that they're they're playing arbitrage more than they're actually marketing the show, and like their marketing is going towards like getting placed higher in the Google ad versus doing the work of marketing the show and like letting folks know like this band is coming to town. They probably do a fair amount of both. But I think where the scalping companies like really create trouble is just this is an industry that like lives on the margin, and if 10-20% is being siphoned off, um, like that could be everything. Like someone, these venue owners could live with an extra 10%. They could live with an extra 20%. But I'm curious if you have a counter to that, just to have a healthy, debate here on the call. Yeah.
If I have a counter to resale,
The point that they make is they're help driving demand to the venues. That's the point that they make.
I don't even think that's close. They're
Yeah.
extracting. They're
Yeah.
extracting. They're
I hear
extracting.
you. Yeah.
I mean, I think, if they were driving demand, then it would be organic.
Yeah.
Why would StubHub need to spend nearly $1 billion on advertising if it was organic?
Yeah.
It's about the fact that they make a lot more money. The platforms, the scalpers make a lot more money on tickets than
Hmm.
an independent venue does. We take on all the risk. We pay for the insurance. We pay for the security. We pay to make sure that the lights are on. We pay to make sure that the artist can eat before they go on stage. And we pay the artist. They
Hmm.
pay for nothing. Their only expense is the platform and the marketing.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think that argument is really, really rich
Yeah.
and not true.
Yeah. It's
Um,
flawed in all sorts of ways. And again, if they were just blasting the show, if they were doing the work that like these marketing teams are doing, like let's get the post up on Instagram, like let's get it in the local newspaper and that type of thing. But really when you say advertising, I think it's important to distinguish the fact that they're not promoting the show. They're promoting their ticket link over other ticketing links. And, this is part of the conversation that came up in their debate because they say that like, hey, we're moving inventory. And it's like, no, you're playing arbitrage. Like you're just trying to like get ahead of like the Google link. It's not like really, spreading awareness around the event.
yeah, I'm looking at my phone because one of our venues somewhere in the South sent me a text on Monday. Um, there's a show. There was a show listed on StubHub this past Tuesday or for this past Tuesday with a Hot 8 brass band. It was listed August 5th, Tuesday, 4:25 a.m. It was listed for $988. The show didn't exist. There was no show.
Yeah.
There was no
Yeah.
show, period, with the Hot 8
Yeah.
brass band. But there especially wasn't a show at 4:25 a.m.
Yeah. It's just
You
purely
know,
fraud, huh?
yeah, I mean, it's absolute fraud. It's
Yeah.
absolute fraud. And sure, there's 100% cashback guarantee listed at the bottom of the site. But you want a trip, go to the StubHub forum on Reddit and look at how good that guarantee is.
Yeah.
There is post after post of Reddit users talking about how they don't get their money back.
Yeah.
There was one user I saw post a couple weeks ago that bought a ticket for a multi-day festival, bought a pass for a multi-day festival, showed up day one. They realized as they were approaching the gate that what they had wasn't actually a ticket. The broker or scalper had not delivered the ticket to them. It took the entire day to get StubHub to finally send them the ticket.
Yeah.
And by the time that it was over, by the time that they had that ticket, the day was over, which means that they only had access 2 out of the 3 days of this festival.
Yeah.
StubHub wouldn't refund any of their money,
Wow. Not a dollar.
not a dollar.
Unreal.
It is unreal. It is
Ugh.
unreal, and it just shows how disgusting some of the tactics are in the resale sector.
Yep. Yep. Well, let's keep moving along. I mean, one of the items on this was, monopolies. And I think we all know who exactly that means. And we were having some interesting conversations about NIVA and the work that um, NIVA is doing to keep the DOJ lawsuit moving or advocate for that. Like what's happening with the DOJ lawsuit, and like let's just like crack open the like Live Nation conversation just in general.
The DOJ lawsuit is happening.
Yeah.
It is moving forward. We have heard nothing to indicate that it is not. When the president put out an executive order earlier this year, they talked about competition in live entertainment. Tell me what other competition issues in live entertainment would the White House and that executive order be talking about? We have seen Department of Justice attorneys reaching out to independent venues, to promoters, to agents, to festivals, to get more information and to get facts that they need to fight this case. There was a roundtable discussion that the head of antitrust for the U.S. Department of Justice under this administration held back in April, and many of us were there. And they talked about the importance of this case. About 3 weeks ago, the head of antitrust for the U.S. Department of Justice announced the criminal indictment of a company of the CEO of a company that was very tied to Live Nation.
Yeah.
And there it is widely suspected that the anonymous ticketing company that was listed as a party to this whole scheme in that case is Live Nation or Ticketmaster. When the department announced that, they went on a conservative podcast to announce it. The only thing
Yeah.
I saw from this podcast was them announcing this criminal indictment and then talking about
Crazy.
the importance of the Live Nation case.
I gotta
And
find that
so,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
so from our perspective, it sure seems like this is a priority for the antitrust division. I think the more alarming thing is that Live Nation continues to proclaim that it's business as usual.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. This is all normal. This is not.
Yeah.
Tell me another sector.
Wait, sorry, what did you just say? What did you say there? Repeat that.
I think Live Nation, I'm seeing Live Nation go and try to treat what is happening right now with them as normal.
Yeah.
This case is, they don't address it.
Yep.
They don't address it.
Yep.
I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I think, I see the meme of like, is it Obi-Wan saying these are not the droids? These are
Yeah.
not the droids you're looking
You're
for.
not a Star Wars fan. Who's not a Star Wars
I mean,
fan?
I like Star Wars. I'm not obsessed with it, but I think that
Uh,
that is exactly what Live Nation is trying to do. This week, the National Conference of State Legislatures had their conference in Boston. Live Nation on the opening night of this conference did a party with a
Interesting.
lot of lobbyists.
Really?
Not as many legislators, but a lot of lobbyists. And on the screens at this party, they were talking about the quote unquote $1 billion and investments that they're making in new venues across the country. Some of these venues aren't even approved yet,
Yeah.
and some of them won't be.
Yeah.
And they hosted what was a very expensive party for a lot of lobbyists and maybe a few legislators, talking about their economic impact on communities across the country.
Yeah.
This is not economic impact. This is not free market. This is extraction.
Yeah.
This is strip mining of cultural institutions and independent venues and artists and communities across the country. This is replacement, not augmentation. That's why this case continuing is so important, and that's why we think it will continue.
Interesting. Okay, there's a lot that you just said. This is really good. A really good podcast topic to crack open. I appreciate your authenticity. I'm like, where do I even start? Let's back up. Everyone knows that I'm not afraid to talk about it. OVG is the company that you had mentioned, and Tim Luecki was, yeah, there was a criminal. We're just going to state facts, right? There was a criminal case dropped on him, and there was also simultaneously was it a plea deal to not prosecute? So as long as he participated in the DOJ case, like there's been a lot of fog since that happened a few weeks ago. Like, what's the update around all of that? Yeah, and at least recently he pleaded no contest. So like, yeah,
On that part of it, Matt, I just know what I've read in the news. It seems like there's some sort of cooperation between not necessarily the person that was indicted, but the company that he previously led. I'm not an expert on that case, and certainly we're not involved in that case, and we're not involved in anything challenging Oakview Group. The threat to independent venues, promoters, and festivals across the country is Live Nation. That's where our
yeah,
focus is.
yeah.
But I think it's important to show that the DOJ is continuing to hold this sector accountable, regardless of whether we have anything to do with the case that was just brought or not. And so from where I sit, it's just a sign that what's happening in our sector is not normal. As much as everybody who's been in this sector is trained to believe that it is.
Yeah.
The inevitability that Live Nation creates, I believe, is wrong in this case.
Yeah.
I
Well,
believe
yeah,
that
please.
I believe that I hope that they face justice, because ultimately, if they don't, if this is just another consent decree or just another settlement, I am scared to see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's unpack this a little bit. So, and again, the beauty of a podcast is I can just throw out ideas. They don't necessarily represent my beliefs. I'm just kind of curious to see like how you respond to them. And like what exactly do you view as like monopolistic? Like it seems like your perspective and the NIVA perspective is that you're okay calling, what Live Nation is doing is a monopoly, and you're supportive of the DOJ case, like just stating facts here. Um, conceivably, there's a way to do big business that's not monopolistic. There's a way to be a big promoter, to acquire venues. Like it's not illegal to run a big business. So, like, where do you think the distinction is between a promoter that just has a really big business and where there's kind of like foul play that you want to see, um, you know, challenge? And is this purely about splitting Ticketmaster and Live Nation, and that is the domino that allows Live Nation to just be a big business that is okay? Like, it's a competitive market. There's going to be bigger promoters, there's going to be smaller promoters, or does it go deeper than that? I just threw a lot at that question, but I think you'll chip away at it one at a time. Yeah.
So NIVA submitted comments to the U.S. Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission last month that called for Live Nation to be broken into 4 companies:
Wow.
ticketing, promotions, advertising and sponsorship, and artist management. The best argument for what Live Nation does that creates imbalance and unfairness in the live entertainment sector is the following. There is a graphic in the actual complaint against them filed by the U.S. Department of Justice when they filed the lawsuit that shows exactly why one of the many reasons why they are a threat to independent venues and festivals. They make a lot of money from Ticketmaster. They make a lot of money from advertising and sponsorships. They don't make money on their promotions business, or at least the profit margin is very, very thin,
Yeah.
approximately 1%.
It's
And
1%
on
profit
certain
margin. And
it's approximately 1% in the graphic that's presented by the U.S. Department of Justice in the complaint against them. But that doesn't mean that they're making a 1% profit on every show. It means that they can take significant losses on many shows. And based on what's presented in that case, and based on anecdotal evidence presented from people across this sector who work with them every day or see how they operate, they are taking losses. And that's how they are able to, when it is a fair fight, to bid for an artist. That's how they are able to outbid it. Independent venues, independent promoters. If we can't find a capital source to buy the land underneath our venue, how are we going to have a capital source to go into debt and take a loss on shows in order to compete with what Live Nation is able to do because of these other pieces of their company? The U.S. Department of Justice says that this is one signal of a monopoly. The U.S. Department of Justice says this is one piece of their company that shows that they are a walking, talking Sherman Act violation. And so from that standpoint, that is a significant threat. But that's just when the fight is fair. That's just when the competition for the artist is fair. What happens when it's not? What happens when an artist has reached the point where they want to do a big national tour? Live Nation has offered them a beautiful touring deal where they get to tour through all of Live Nation's venues, and Live Nation handles everything. And in the case of one artist, it is their dream on their first national tour to go to this venue that they've always wanted to play, that just happens to be an independent venue and not a Live Nation venue. Does Live Nation let them go play that venue? Sometimes they do, as long as they make money on it as well. And sometimes they don't. A lot of times they do not. And that's a problem. That is what we call all or nothing touring deals. You want to play this independent venue? Sorry.
Yeah.
You sign a deal with us, or you're about to sign a deal with us. It's either all Live Nation venues
Yeah.
or no Live Nation venues. And I want to reiterate, Matt, like this is not
Mhm.
happening every case. Some of our venues are working with Live Nation, and
Yeah,
they should not be
absolutely.
faulted for it. If that's what it takes to keep their doors open, if that's what it takes to get the artists that they love in their rooms, then by all means, that's up to them. And we want them to do well, and we want them to be able to keep their doors open. But that is the third issue.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't want to work with Live Nation?
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You're forced to work with them.
Yeah.
And that is the third issue, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I need to see any more. The fourth issue is there is a lot of things that happen behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately, artists are so important. Independent venues and Live Nation are nothing without the artists that appear in our stages. Artists should make as much money as they can. They should make as much money as they can. They take on so much risk. They have so many costs. Costs are going up for them as much as they are going up for us, and in some cases more.
Hmm.
And so ultimately it's up to independent venues to make sure that as much as we can afford to pay them and still, hopefully be able to keep our doors open, that they are able to do that. They're able to do what they love, just like we're able to do what they love. But ultimately, even if Live Nation doesn't have an exclusive touring deal, and this is where it's hard to point to footnotes and data because
Hmm.
it's so hard for agents to come out and admit this publicly or testify to this point because they don't want retaliation from Live Nation. We have heard anecdotally, both from agents, but also mostly from bookers that work in our venues, that a lot of times they'll have a commitment for a show and they'll get a call that says, sorry, we really wanted to go with you on this one, but there was that time that Live Nation put my artist on this bill at this festival, or this was that, there was this, or, we really want a national tour deal with them. We got to go with them in the city so we can, prove ourselves and go with them. Is that illegal? I don't know.
That was a question that I was going to ask.
But
Part of this, I hate. Other parts of it, it's like, well, you can have a loss leader in a business. It's not technically illegal, Yeah.
I am not an attorney,
Yeah.
but I do know this. Sherman is about a collection of things that are happening. The Sherman Antitrust Act is about a collection. It's about a wide body of evidence that shows anti-competitive practices. It doesn't necessarily, not my understanding is not all of these things need to be illegal,
Yeah.
but are the tactics as a whole leading to a lack of competition
Mm.
and in the live entertainment sector? And we would argue that it is.
It's funny because a lot of people will set up a straw man when they're defensive of Live Nation in this situation, um they'll say, okay, well, there's AEG, there's 1,000, and then there's Steven over there with a network of 1,800 venues, and artists have these choices. And I think you brought up a really interesting point. Like, you're not a lawyer, but what I'm hearing you say is that the legality is not that an unequivocal monopoly, but there's monopolistic practices, and that it's heading in that direction. So, like,
To be clear, we
yeah,
believe that they are a monopoly, but it's not up to us. It's up to the court system, right?
yeah.
So we can
Well,
we can present evidence. We can present
yeah,
evidence from our members. We can present evidence that's in the in the media and kind of in the broader public conversation. But ultimately, what the U.S. Department of Justice has said, they have deemed them a monopoly. 40 state attorneys generals have said that they've deemed them a monopoly. But in the end, it's not just because NIVA is raising her hand and saying, by the way, we think they're a monopoly. That is not going to change things. It's up to the U.S. Department of Justice and 40 state AGs, bipartisan AGs, Democrats and Republicans, to take this case forward. And hopefully the courts will come to the same conclusion that we have.
yeah. I think it's funny. I was like looking up on the side here, like, what is the standard definition of a monopoly? And I think this is one question that is curious about, like, is it like a monopoly, doesn't a monopoly infer that there's only one? Just to let's just straw man this. Like I'm not taking sides here one way or the other, but just to like kind of extract the a good conversation in this podcast. Like does AEG be in the market disprove a monopoly from your perspective, or like maybe it's not about proving that they're a monopoly, but there's monopolistic practices. Like how does AEG kind of, being in the market either prove or not prove, or the point that you're trying to make, or that NIVA like has a stance on? Yeah.
I think, you go back to the percentage. Live Nation boasts about the percentage of live entertainment
Yeah.
sector that they control.
Yeah.
I don't hear any other company out there talking about the fact that they control 60% or 70% or 80%
Is that what
or
they
whatever
say?
number they're using that week. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so, we can bring in other companies to this discussion, but I don't think it's warranted
Yeah.
because I think in the end,
The most
we're out
important
there
things that
we're
matter.
out
Yeah.
we're out there talking about this because there is a case with near unanimity
Yeah.
from all of the law enforcement officials in the states and the federal
Yeah.
government that Live Nation's a monopoly. And
Yeah.
that's where we should focus our attention.
It's really interesting because I think nuance is so important here, and some folks will point to the Taylor Swift concert to say excuse me, the Taylor Swift tour, where they'll say, hey, look, there's an example where it's the biggest tour ever, and it wasn't a Live Nation tour, it was an AEG tour. Well, you could take the same side of that other coin and say, even in a situation where a promoter managed to get a good tour outside, that wasn't Live Nation, well, it was still going through Ticketmaster, it was still
There
going
you
to,
go.
yeah,
There you go.
it's
Um, so I mean, it was a Louis Messina tour. And yes, he works very closely with AEG, but also he's been a promoter forever. And he has a relationship with Taylor Swift. And so, from my perspective, I'm not here to kind of say what is or what is not a lack of competition, aside from the case and the evidence that's been presented from our members, from the broader live entertainment community about Live Nation. There's not a case against any of these other companies. 40 state AGs haven't brought these other companies to court. They've brought Live Nation to court, and that's what we're fighting to keep alive.
Yeah, and I'll lay off of it for a minute there, but I just wanted to kind of unpack it, and there's some ideas that came up that I hadn't thought about, and I know I'm probably getting into the realm of like, something that the lawyers are ultimately going to work out here, but I absolutely get what you're saying, and I definitely appreciate you bringing it up, and it's interesting because when I talk to promoters and partners, and I'm not even going to say my stance on Live Nation, I have plenty of friends that are over there, and
And let me be clear.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, please,
that Live Nation has tremendous people
yeah,
who are also following their dreams.
yeah,
That doesn't change the fact that the model is damaging to our community. All of these people, I hope, can continue to live their dreams after Live Nation is broken up.
that's a beautiful caveat there. That's a beautiful caveat, Stephen, and that brings some humanity to it, which I deeply appreciate. And not that I was saying your response lacked it. Your willingness to make a stand is refreshing. Is all the point that I was trying to make. And there's a lot of people that wanna that kind of they'll say things behind closed doors, but they don't really want to piss off Live Nation, and
Well, I
yeah,
mean, I'm in a position of privilege here because
yeah,
I will just say, like, there's a reason that I am the person out there talking about this.
yeah,
And that is because our venues are scared of retaliation.
yeah,
They are.
yeah,
Even if they're not working with Live Nation, they're scared that somehow they could be damaged in some way, either by
yeah,
not getting an artist or by a radius clause impacting them in some way. And so, it's hard to point to what retaliation is. It's hard to point to, whether these actual fears are valid. But I also think that fear is not a legal construct, as far as I know. Again, I'm not an attorney. Maybe fear is a legal
yeah,
construct,
yeah,
but I think that fear is also a great sign that something needs to happen here to
yeah.
change the way that this sector does business.
Yeah, Stephen, let me ask you this question. If it works out exactly the way that you want it to, and it gets broken up into four companies, um, and enough time goes by that it goes perfectly. Let's just pretend it goes perfectly, and enough time goes by that the industry changes. Like what part of the problem does this solve, and what does that world look like when there's not that when conceivably not all the problems go away, of course, but like what do you think happens to venues when there's not this monopolistic problem that you're referencing?
Here's where I'm a realist. If Live Nation is broken up into four companies by the courts, Live Nation is still the largest promoter in the world.
Yeah,
They just don't, they just have to live with the same economics that we do.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's all I need to say.
yeah, yeah,
I think we are trying to level the playing field. We
yeah,
are trying to create fair, free market competition.
yeah.
And right now, we believe that the structure that was approved by the US Department of Justice in 2010 allowed them to do things that are unfair to the rest of the sector, including artists.
Hmm.
All that we're saying is that that should change. Live
Yep.
Nation will continue to be the largest promoter in the world,
Yeah,
even
Ticketmaster will be the
after they're
biggest
broken
ticketing
up.
company in the world. Yeah,
Why is this so controversial? Why is this so
yeah.
controversial? Live up to the same economics that the rest of the small businesses and large
you
companies
know
and nonprofits have to live up to. That's all that the court has to do.
that's an incredibly nuanced perspective that I think, not that I'm like trying to give you advice right here on the pod, but just like leading with that, like I believe in Live Nation being the biggest promoter in the world, and they should play fair, and
Oh, I don't
making them,
believe in it. I don't think it's right. I'm just saying, stating the facts. If the court
yeah,
breaks it up into four companies and doesn't break promotions up into multiple companies, they're still the
yeah,
largest promoter in the world. And to
yeah,
me, that does not seem like a dramatic step for the sector
yeah.
to take or for the courts to take.
Yeah, that's my point. Is it's not that you want them to be this biggest promoter in the world, but you're not calling it for it to dissolve. Yeah, is the point. Is like you're like, hey, like let's all be on an equal playing field in terms of how we play. And yeah, it's an interesting nuanced perspective there, Stephen. Yeah. What's your what's your best guess on if it's going to happen or not, and timeline? Yeah.
Uh, I don't. I think that me making guesses is not productive. I
Okay.
think
Fair
all
enough.
signs right now through official channels point to this case being heard sometime in 2026.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and ultimately it's going to be up to the courts. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to be in there arguing for them to be broken up. That's going to be the US Department of Justice and 40 state AGs. But I will say this. I am not an attorney, but I am a student of history.
Yeah.
And that 40 state AG threshold generally has meant that success is much more likely. When
Wow.
you look at that threshold,
Yeah.
you look at cases that have been brought with that many state AGs or more. Cases like the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement that came in the 90s, and the U.S. Department of Justice and state AGs won on. You look at the case against pharmaceutical companies less than 10 years ago around opioids.
Hmm.
I believe that had 50 state AGs. The Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement had 40 plus state AGs. The state AG threshold here, I think, is really, really important to remember. And it's why Live Nation was at NCSL with
Hmm.
a lobbying firm that lobbies state AGs.
Yeah.
It's they know that that threshold is presents this case as a danger to them as well. And that's why it's so important that these brave elected officials to run for their offices in the first place, but also brave to bring this case, continue to have the courage that they are doing what's best for the American people. And let's be clear, these state AGs and the US Department of Justice right now, by continuing this case, are doing what's best for the American people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I heard you're flying to Portland to protest a venue. On what's it's in the same spirit here. What's going on with that? Why you feel compelled to do that, and what's the situation?
Listen, this case is as much local as it is national.
Yeah,
And the threat that Live Nation has is we're not talking about the threat that Live Nation is to NIVA.
yeah,
We're not talking about the threat that Live Nation is to the nation.
yeah,
We're talking about the threat that Live Nation is to communities.
yeah.
Um, Live Nation has partnered with a very large developer in Portland, Maine to
Oh, Portland, Maine.
build
Okay, okay.
Portland, Maine to build
Yeah.
a 3,300 capacity venue. And City Council in Portland, Maine is considering a moratorium for 180 days, and then they can extend it by another 180 days to give the community, to give this developer more time to figure out a better solution that does not involve working with a promoter that's being sued by the U.S. Department of Justice and 40 state AGs. I'm looking forward to backing up our members and the artist community in Portland, Maine this weekend and on Monday. And ultimately, I'm there to be moral support and to make sure that I'm there to ask any questions, but this is their fight. And I'm there to make sure that they have anything that they need. And that fight is making sure that Live Nation does not become the fox in the hen house in Portland, Maine when it comes to independent artists, independent venues, and independent promoters and independent festivals. There's an independent festival this weekend. There was one last weekend. Live Nation's making the argument that Portland, Maine doesn't get big artists. They do. They do. This is not about Live Nation coming and bringing additional artists to Portland, Maine. This is about Live
Mm,
Nation coming in and in many cases, maybe not all cases, in many cases, taking away artists from independent venues, festivals, promoters that have given back to that community for generations without anything in return from the city or from the state. The decision that Portland City Council is making on Monday night is not just a Portland, Maine decision. It will affect the entire state of Maine and pieces of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts because of how Live Nation uses radius clauses. We hope that they will make the right decision and press pause on this so that the community can figure out a better partner than one that is an alleged monopoly.
man, that's this is yeah, showing the power of NIVA just being an activist organization, and actually like getting out there and creating change in real time and like stepping into the battles that are happening. And I applaud you for taking action. What you feel is right, Stephen. It's pretty interesting. I mean, this whole thing is news to me. I didn't hear about this until you brought it up, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, is there any other places where this is happening, or is this kind of like the main battleground you're focused on?
Well, let's focus on the positive.
Yeah,
Nashville, Tennessee. Live Nation won a contract 10 years ago to manage a city-owned amphitheater. It's it's called Ascend. It's on the water. It's in prime location,
yeah,
right
yeah,
around the corner from Broadway, where
yeah.
a lot of people go see music. A lot of tourists go see music as well. Um, when that came up for recompete this year, the city decided to not go with an alleged monopoly
Yeah.
that is being sued by their state's attorney general.
Yep.
They went with a local promoter,
Yep. Shout
Ryman
out to the Ryman.
Ry-
Yeah. Yeah.
Ryman Hospitality, right?
One of my
That's
favorite
a
partners.
positive
Yeah.
story. That's a positive story of a
Yeah.
local promoter that is national in scope. There's no debating that, but a local promoter that agreed to have an open room. When
Yep.
Live Nation wasn't using Ascend, it was empty. Local promoters couldn't use it. Community organizations couldn't use it. Ryman, as part of their deal with the city, has agreed to allow for that space to be a community space again. That's worth it alone. That's worth it. Forget about your tax status. Forget about where you're located. Forget about whether you're a
It's
monopoly.
amazing. Yeah.
Um, Opening up a city space back to the community to use when that promoter is not using it is a gift. And I can't give Ryman enough credit for structuring the deal in the way that they did to make sure that independent venues have a shot to use that as well.
Yeah.
Huge. Well done, Ryman. Well done. We need more of that. And then, a city in California, Irvine,
Yeah.
in 2023, Live Nation, they were working with Live Nation on a deal in principle to manage a city, amphitheater the city was building. And because of the community outcry and the artist outcry, they went in a different direction.
Hmm.
And so, these are the positive stories. But there are places where things have not gone well.
Yeah.
Places like Des Moines, Iowa, where we're starting to see some fraying at the edges, given a new venue that Live Nation created on the outskirts of Des Moines. Portland, Oregon, where Live Nation just got an approval from a city council and a mayor that was just voted out, and an entirely new council and mayor there. The artist community is still up in arms.
Hmm.
City council members who were now there, who weren't there when that vote happened, don't necessarily like that vote happened, and don't necessarily like that Live Nation is coming to that community in Portland, Oregon. This is happening everywhere. Live Nation put out a list of 18 communities where they are trying to come to. One of them is Orlando, Florida. In Orlando, Florida, downtown, independent venues that are open past midnight now have to pay for police that are on duty downtown,
Wow.
whether they're at the venue or needed by the venue or not.
Yeah.
Live Nation was exempted from that requirement.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
This is, listen, I'm fortunate to lead this organization.
Yeah.
Um, this has been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it's time for us to tell the story of how this is happening and why it needs to stop.
Yeah. I think just for the spirit of how much time we got left on this pod, I'm gonna nudge us along. It's a juicy topic. You've spoken bravely, authentically, fairly, frankly, and I appreciate you for doing this. And
And
if I just
and, and
go
I
ahead,
just I
please.
just want to say over and over again, as somebody who can see the faces of people that I know who work for Live Nation, I want all of them to be okay.
I hear you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for saying that.
I
Yeah,
do. I do.
yeah,
I want them to be okay. I want the people to work there to be whole when
yeah,
this is all said and done, all of them. And from my perspective, those people deserve a good outcome from this as well,
yeah,
even if the structure of what they're working in changes.
yeah. Well, if we zoom out, I think we I love that we did the State Alive podcast because we've basically been unpacking like the major topics in the challenges to venues. You brought up the issues with StubHub and that's related to scalping. There's like the monopolistic practices slash competition that we just spent a lot of time on, and then the next one that I'm seeing on here is interesting. I think it's a little bit it's curious because costs are multiple items. So I'm wondering if like costs got grouped together, if they would be number one, because number two is artist costs rising. Number three is staffing costs. Number four is inflation, which is also a cost. Number six is rising insurance costs.
Yes.
Then there's scalpers and predatory platform. Number eight is cost and rent and mortgage. So it's probably safe to say that the number one is cost rising. That
I think
has
it's a very safe assumption.
yeah, yeah. And which is different. Maybe they're related, but it's different than Live Nation. It's different than monopolies. It's different than scalping. So what can we do about cost rising? Like where's the answers there without, with kind of letting everything that was said about those other categories. Like and you have this policy summit coming up, which I know is going to be news by the time we release this podcast. Maybe it's related to that. So let's talk about
Yeah.
rising costs because that's like that's serious. The whole thing is serious, but it's like, even if all those things go away, but costs keep going up, venues are in trouble. Frankly, brick and
Listen,
mortars
I
around the
mean,
country are struggling. How do we solve that?
exactly. I mean, I I feel like this entire podcast is just me saying I'm not an attorney and not an economist. Um, but I'm not an economist. But here's what I've gathered based on me living my life in the US and in the world. It's really hard to put the inflation balloon back in the box.
Yep, of course.
And so ultimately we just
You
have
can
to move
slow
forward.
it, but not put it back. Yeah.
Correct. You just have to move forward. I mean, not that this is about NIVA, but I will tell you what NIVA is doing is we are trying to use the collective power, the 155,000 plus events, the 184 million fans that we serve, and the 1,500 venues that we represent, and go to some of these large companies and large vendors that our members are buying from and see if we can negotiate better rates for them. We've done that on food. We've done that on cleaning supplies. We've done that on kitchen and bar supplies. We have done that on swipe fees for credit cards. We have done that on insurance, or we're trying to do it on insurance. We've got a pilot right now to see if we can get more affordable insurance for our members. And we have done it on equipment, instruments, speakers, microphones, cables, lighting, screens, all of the above. That's what we're doing. And it's impacting not all of our members positively, but the ones who've taken advantage of it, it's certainly saving them some money, in some cases, a lot of money. We want to do more of that. It is our role to go in and represent the power of NIVA, the collective power of NIVA, to see if we can make things a little bit cheaper for them. That's it. I also think, as we think about controlling costs, like, we have got to figure out what we can do to educate our members on just different things. Part of that is just how they lower their insurance costs. We talked to some insurance companies coming in, making sure venues know that if there's certain signage that can lower their cost. On resale, making sure that they know what to watch out for, making sure that they can spin their ads in the best way to maneuver around the unlimited budgets that people like StubHub have to outbid them. Education is such a huge part of controlling costs, and it's something that we take very seriously. The National Independent Venue Foundation, our 501(c)(3) arm, they do a wonderful job with education almost every week and helping venues kind of figure out how to navigate this really, really hard world of being a small business or a nonprofit. And those are the things that we're doing. And I know that venues are trying to do more on their own, but honestly, what we need is more people to buy tickets. We need more people to understand the power of what their dollar being spent in an independent venue or festival or promoter means.
Absolutely. You want to talk about the policy summit? I'm sure it kind of weaves into
Yeah,
this.
so in 2 months from right around the time that this podcast is going to air, we're going to try something new. Our friends in Indianapolis, particularly the city of Indianapolis, and just a wonderful independent venue, Hi-Fi, are hosting.
Shout out Josh Baker, MOKV
That's right.
Presents.
Shout out
Amazing.
Josh Baker. He deserves it always.
Truly, he's a real one.
Well, and his generosity is why we're going to Indianapolis. We're going to go and do the first live policy summit we've ever seen. It's the first one we've ever done, certainly in person. It's going to be a 24-hour meeting. We're going to talk about really 4 core topics. One is ticketing. 2 is live performance funds that we've seen established in places like Tennessee and Texas over the last couple of years. 3 is just broad city issues like sound ordinances and music commissions and PROs, the
Cool.
proliferation of PROs, the importance of making sure that performing rights organizations, the money that we pay into them, actually goes to the creators whose works are being exploited on our stages. All of these things are policy related, and we're looking forward to bringing together maybe a few people, maybe a lot of people. It could just be me, who knows? But
We'll be there too.
yeah, I mean, not that you need more analogies in this podcast, but I hope to God that if we build it, they will come. So
Well, we'll give a special shout out to it. And when you want to get the word out, let us know on
thank
top of
you.
the podcast. We're happy to blast it out. It's a good, important thing you're doing for the industry. Just to kind of wrap with some fastballs. And Stephen, assuming you still have 5 to 10-ish left, is that
Yeah,
okay?
we're
Okay.
good. But probably 5. Probably 5.
Okay, let's do 5. Yeah. So to wrap up with some fastballs, I want to get your perspective on all-in ticketing. What I guess to lead the witness a little bit, when I first heard that it was going down, I was optimistic about the long term. I still am optimistic about the long term. I want a more transparent, interesting industry. I think there's a lot of funkiness with how deals are done, and I don't like the consumer experience of buying a ticket and then you get to check out. But and it's triple or whatever, and that's maybe a little bit exaggerated, but one thing that has been put on my radar is talking to our partners. The short term cost is hitting venues like they didn't, the whole if everyone agrees that this is the best for the long term. Well, there's a lot of reasons why a lot of fees were stuffed into checkout, and from facility fees to paying the ticketing companies back with loans, and it's another headwind that I'm hearing in the short term for venues. So where's NIVA at with All In? On one side, I know it was something we were all excited about in the long term, but are you also grappling with the short term impact that is very real for venues right now?
I think we need to assess it very carefully. We don't know how something's going to impact a venue until they actually have to deal with it. And let's just zoom out. Not to bring it back to a monopoly, but I think this is important for the question you just asked me. yesterday, it's Friday, August 8th. On Thursday, August 7th, Live Nation announced their quarter 2 earnings. It was the best quarter 2 that they've ever had, based on what they presented on their investor call and in the press release that they put out. The headlines yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening, this morning were the concert business is booming. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. And here's why. Before those earnings came out, I sent an email to a couple of thousand venues, promoters, and festivals and asked them 3 questions. Are your ticket sales right now higher, much higher, flat, lower, or much lower than last year at this time? When's the last time, if it is bad, when's the last time you saw it this bad? And what do you think is causing this? 83% of the people who responded, of the venues, festivals, promoters who responded, said that ticket sales are much lower or lower than it was a year ago. And the most common response for venues that have been open for some time about when it was this bad previously was the recession in 2008. That's a scary, scary, scary sign. And yes, the response is limited. It's not even 10% of our members that have responded, but a decent amount have in 24 hours. And it's anecdotal. That's how we have to view it. We can't view this as the industry as a whole, that we can't view this as independent venues as a whole, but it's an issue. And we asked again, what do you think is contributing to this? The number 1 response is the economy. The number 2 response is just broader economic factors breaking through the cost of these larger arena shows or larger amphitheater shows, and how that's eating into the overall income, disposable income that people can spend in independent venues on maybe artists that aren't as big as what Live Nation and some of these other promoters are putting through. But a little bit further down on the list is all-in pricing. All-in pricing was an FTC requirement that went into place on May 12th.
Yeah, went in place quickly.
May 12th this year. It would have been much sooner, had there not been kind of an extension on all regulations at the beginning of the new administration. And so, people were ticketing companies especially, were furiously trying to become compliant with the FTC and this new rule. Transparency is a wonderful thing, but the FTC rule and how it ended up is flawed. It's flawed. And it's not me that's saying that, it's the artists. We have talked to the artists. We have worked with the Future Music Coalition and the Recording Academy and the Recording Industry Association of America and the Music Managers Forum, the National Independent Talent Organization, and I can keep going. All the artist groups we talk to. We have a bi-weekly, we have a every other week call with all the artist groups talking about ticketing. And artists wanted transparency. The FTC rule doesn't provide transparency. Here's what the FTC rule does. It says that you have to have one price that includes everything except taxes or anything variable or optional or add-on at the beginning of the transaction from the first display. The artists want there to be a breakdown at the same time that's displayed. The FTC didn't listen to them. And what we were left with is something that I think actually advantages resale platforms like StubHub and Vivid Seats, because they've been doing this for a while. Except what they do is they will list the initial price, and then it isn't until after you put in your credit card number on many of these resale platforms that you see how much the fees are. I've not seen an independent venue that does that. Certainly the artists do not like that. So what I would say is, even if you think transparency is good, even if you think all-in pricing is good, there is a possibility the FTC rule and how it's crafted and constructed is the problem. And I'm not here to definitively say that it is, and I'm not here to definitively say that ticket sales are not doing well right now for a number of independent venues, promoters, and festivals because of the FTC rule. But we should certainly take this seriously, given the timing of this slowdown in sales. And if it is impacting sales, we absolutely have to revisit this. We should revisit it with transparency and consumer protection in mind, but we should also revisit it to see if there's a better way. And I think education of consumers by artists, by venues, by promoters, by festivals is going to be really important to create understanding moving forward, whether the FTC rule changes again or not.
So is the idea that if you have to break down everything on the primary ticketing, you can see this equitable breakdown. If on the on StubHub, if they to break it down, it reveals like the profit gouging more so. And is that your general thought?
I don't think you should have to put in your credit card number to see what you're paying in face value and what you're paying in fees.
I see. Yeah.
I mean,
So
and
that's
that rule allows resale companies to continue to do that.
I see. So are you net for all-in pricing in the long run? And there's details to work out.
I am for what allows the artist and the venue, the artist and the festival, the artist and the promoter continuing to be able to do the work that they love. And I am for I'm for price transparency.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think all-in pricing is the future and currently the present, but there may be a better way to do it than what we're currently doing. And I think we all need to look at that very, very carefully. And, we haven't even had a call with kind of the artist groups since some of these factors and trends have been emerging. And I want to work with those artist groups that are so important to getting things done in this country in the art space and in the music space. And ultimately, I think whatever we come up with, whatever NIVA comes up with, they've got to be okay with it as well. And I think we got to do it together.
Love it. Well, let's end with this question. What's your hope for the future of NIVA and your hope for the future of the music industry?
My hope for the future of NIVA is that we continue to be a sustainable organization that can be a national voice for a sector, the independent live entertainment sector, that has existed on this continent since before the US was a nation, but has only had a voice since the wonderful people that started this organization started it 5 years ago. What I want for the sector is for it to be sustainable. The profitability in the music and live performance community should not rest with a few players or with one in particular. It should rest with as many as possible. It should rest with artists of every size and every listener count on streaming platforms. And it should rest with the small businesses and nonprofits that take on all the risk in order to make sure that those artists have their start and continue to come back to communities over and over again. My wish is that 64% unprofitability number goes down dramatically in the next 2 years.
Love that. There was a music industry before the US. An events industry before the US was founded here.
There was live entertainment that happened on this continent.
Fascinating.
Theaters outdoors prior to the US becoming a nation. Wow. Told you I was a history major.
Maybe another podcast on that one. That would be fun to talk
about. No.
about.
I am a rusty history major, so maybe you should get an actual historian to come in. But I mean, one of the reason why this came up is because there's a great book called Ticket Masters.
Yes.
And there are stories about Charles Dickens coming to speak in the US and what they called speculators going and buying up all the tickets and then waiting outside where these tickets were for sale to sell them for a higher amount. So there's a lot of history to be learned here about all the things that we're facing now. They've been around for a while. Now it's time to start addressing them. It's been a pleasure, Matt.
Yeah, it really has, Stephen. Thank you so much.
Let me know if you need anything. I'm around. We appreciate all that Prism does for the live entertainment community.
Thank you.
We appreciate all that Prism does and you do for NIVA. And we're here for you if you need us.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. It was a great episode. Yeah.